Painting. European themes and techniques introduced in painting during the Mughal period achieved more prominence during the colonial period. The art of painting in India during the British period is characterized by a number of styles. Earlier, they mostly depicted court scenes and different aspects of aristocratic life. Later, some of them also chose ordinary people and their lives as their subjects. However, in some way or the other, their paintings always reflected a sense of superiority characterizing their colonial mindset. Some of the major trends of the imperial art were picturesque landscape paintings, life-size portrait paintings, history paintings. Various British artists came to India during this period and began to work here. For instance, Tilly Kettle, William Hodges, and Robert M. Grindley. Tilly Kettle, a portrait painter, was the first English painter to work in India. Most of his portraits were those of elite Indians and company officials. William Hodges visited India during the period of Warren Hastings in 1778. The first English professional landscape painter in India, he remained in Lucknow for about 6 years. In 1793, Hodges published an illustrated book about his travels in India. Robert M. Grindley came to India in 1803 as an army officer. His book, Scenery, Costumes and Architecture, is ranked among the finest color plate volumes depicting the views of India. Thomas Daniel and William Daniel were the best-known practitioners of picturesque landscape painting. They mostly used watercolors or charcoal instead of oil paint. Usually, they painted ruins of ancient or medieval monuments, suggesting that a great civilization was in ruins. They showed traditional India as a pre-modern and changeless world with numerous fakirs, sadhus, snake charmers, elephants, cows, boats, etc. However, when they painted British settlements and new commercial centers, they painted large and majestic buildings, new means of transport, etc. to contrast life in Indian cities and towns in the pre-colonial and colonial periods. The message was that colonialism had civilized India. The European artists assumed that the subject matter of the painting must look as real as possible. They used to observe the subject carefully and then painted it. So many of their paintings appear to be real and very close to life. Thus, we can say that the European artists brought with them the idea of realism. British artists introduced life-size portraits for the first time. They emphasized the superiority of British power by showing Indians as servants in the background and the British at the forefront. Many Indian Nawabs wanted to socialize with the British and adopt British customs, habits, and even tastes. So they commissioned oil portraits of themselves by visiting British artists such as Tilly Kettle or George Wilson. Another famous European painter, Johann Tofani, came to India in search of rich patrons in 1780s. The government established art schools in Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, and Lahore. Indian students were trained in new styles and techniques of painting by European teachers in these schools. Maharaja Ram Singh of Jaipur established the Hunari Madrasa with C.S. Valentine as the principal. Over the period of time, this madrasa came to be known as Maharaja School of Arts. The contemporary painters of the Mughal school were greatly influenced by the European style of painting. The school that emerged due to the confluence of Mughal and European style is known as the Company School, named after the English East India Company. The importance of this school increased along with the rise in the fortunes of the EEIC. The company officials were the major patrons of this school. The major centers of the company school were at Patna, Varanasi, Delhi, Pune, Nepal, etc. Practitioners of history painting painted episodes from the triumphant spread of the British colonial state in India. This form of paintings aimed to create a public memory of imperial triumphs and also favorable image of British actions in India. British painter Robert Kerr Potter, for example, painted British military triumph in the Battle of Seringapatam against Tipu Sultan, the ruler of Mysore. In this, he showed British troops storming the fort of Tipu Sultan from all sides. Many such history paintings were done to prove that the British were all-powerful. Indian response. Abanindranath Tagore, nephew of Rabindranath Tagore, was the founder of Bengal School of Painting. This school was influenced by European, Iranian, Chinese, Japanese, Mughal and Ajanta schools of art. The famous painters of this school, apart from Abanindranath Tagore, included Nandalal Basu, Asit Kumar Haldar, Kshetindranath Majumdar and many others. The inspiration of this school came from Ajanta, Rajput and Mughal paintings. The themes of the Bengal school mostly include historical, mythical and literary. The Mysore and Tanjavur schools of art flourished in South India. The common themes were Hindu religion, royal portraits and court scenes. One of the most famous painters in South India was Raja Ravi Verma, who belonged to the erstwhile royal family of Travancore. Modernist painting. Many new artists were deeply impressed by Impressionism, Expressionism, Dadaism, Cubism and various other new trends in art that emerged in Europe in the 19th and early 20th centuries. They interpreted European techniques with Indian sensibilities. Leading artists of this period were Paritosh Sen, Nirod Majumdar and Prakash Das Gupta. Amrita Shergill and George Keat were the most outstanding among them. They were well versed in modern European art, modern spirit and modes of expressions. Amrita Shergill depicted the lives of common people, especially rural women, in her paintings. George Keat used sweeping lines with diverse colors to represent his own version of Cubism. Progressive painting and PAG. The Progressive Artists Group, PAG, the most influential group of modern artists in India, was formed in 1947. It was formed by Francis Newton Souza and S. H. Raza, M. F. Hussain, S. K. Bakre, Akbar Padamsi, Tayyab Mehta, Vasudev S. Gaitonde, Krishan Khanna and Mohan Samant were some of the prominent members of this group. This group wanted to break from the nationalism style established by the Bengal School of Art and paint with absolute freedom in content and technique. The group disbanded in 1956. Photography. New to the arts scene in the 19th century, with photography which reached India soon after its discovery in Europe. Samuel Bourne was the first noted European photographer to reach India in early 1860s. He set up one of the most famous photographic studios in Calcutta, now Kolkata, known as Bourne and Shepherd. Another famous photographer was Felice Beto. In the late 19th century, Maharaja Bir Chand, Manikya of Tripura, was among many princes who took a keen interest in photography. Maharaja Savai Ram Singh II of Jaipur was another skilled practitioner noted for his portrait of British notables and women in his court. However, Lala Deen Dayal was known as the era's most famous photographer. He worked for both British and Indian patrons, and among his subjects were Lord and Lady Curzon and the Nizam of Hyderabad. He was appointed court photographer to Curzon. Many other Indian photographers began taking the photographs of the national marches and meetings as well as the everyday life of the people. Architecture. The British, like the Mughal, used architecture as a statement of power. Towns in India were modelled along the British architectural lines and included institutional, civic and utilitarian buildings such as post offices, railway stations, assembly halls, water system, clock towers and public hospitals. Many such structures can still be seen in Bombay and Madras and the other cities built during the British period. Bombay. In 1864, the Governor of Bombay, Sir Bartle Frere, launched a grand-scale rebuilding plan. Several imposing public buildings were constructed like the Victoria Terminus, the University of Bombay, the Town Hall, the Prince of Wales Museum and the Gateway of India, etc. The Victoria Terminus in Bombay, now called the Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus building in 1888, was named after Queen Victoria. It was designed by a famous British architect, F.W. Starrus. It was recognized as an UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2004. Victoria Terminus, modelled on St Pancras Station, London, combined the Gothic and Indo-Saracenic style. It looks more like a cathedral than a railway station. Stones of different colors were used along with decorated tiles and stained glass. Both domes and spires coexist harmoniously in this magnificent building. Another Indo-Saracenic building, the Prince of Wales Museum, was built in the 20th century. It was constructed to commemorate the visit of Prince of Wales. The building was designed by architect George Whitted. Bombay's most outstanding landmark is the Gateway of India. This high arch was built to commemorate the visit of British monarch George V in 1911. A conventional Arch of Triumph inspires its 26-meter-high archway. It is complete with 4 turrets and intricate lattice work carved into yellow basalt stone. The gateway was made of yellow sandstone and reinforced concrete. The last British troops to leave India passed ceremonially through this gateway in 1948. Madras. A great many grand buildings were constructed here in the late 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. The War Memorial, which is situated to the south of the Fort St. George, is a graceful building. It was built in 1939 in memory of the warriors who sacrificed their lives during the First World War. St. Thomas Cathedral Basilica is at the southern end of the Marine Beach and was built in honor of St. Thomas, an apostle of Christ. He is said to have visited this part of the country in about 52 CE. The beautiful stained glass windows at the basilica portray the story of St. Thomas. Its central hall has 14 wooden plaques depicting scenes from the last days of Christ. Other buildings of the colonial period in Chennai are Presidency College, the Chennai Central Station, the Ripon Building, and the Southern Railway Headquarters. These are some of the best examples of Indo-European style of architecture. Literature. In 1800, Fort William College was established in Calcutta to train the administrators of the East India Company in the languages of India. It provided facilities for teaching Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian, Hindustani, Bengali, Tamil, Marathi and Kannada. Establishment of the printing press was an important development in the history of development of literature in India during the colonial period. The process of lithography, or the method of printing on a smooth surface, invented by Alois Senefelder in 1798, revolutionized the process of printing all over the world. The lithographic press was brought to India in the year 1825 with the establishment of the Asiatic Lithographic Press in Calcutta. Later, Calcutta emerged as a major publishing center, producing books on a variety of subjects. Growth of literature. The development of the printing press had a significant impact on the development of Indian literature. The Fort William College began its activities with translation of the Hitopadesha, Panchatantra and other popular Sanskrit works in Indian vernaculars. These books were well received by the readers, though the readership was quite limited during this period. The literature of the 19th century differed from traditional Indian literature in terms of the themes. Earlier, the literature revolved around religion, whereas later social issues, life of the common man, and the freedom struggle were the major themes. The literature of the British period was written in almost all languages, such as Bengali, Hindi, Assamese, Urdu, Kannada, Malayalam, Oriya, Tamil, and Telugu. Bengali. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is known for his contribution to Bengali literature. He translated various Sanskrit books into Bengali. The Indigo Revolt that occurred after the revolt of 1857 became a subject of writing. Dinabandhu Mitra's famous drama Neel Darpan, The Indigo Mirror, highlighted the pathetic condition of the peasants and workers in the cultivation of indigo. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee began his literary journey with Durgesh Nandini, which was published in 1865. India's national song Vande Mataram appears in his most famous novel, Anandamath. Michael Madhusudan Dutt wrote Meghnad Vad, The Slaying of Meghnad, which was based on the Ramayana. Rabindranath Tagore, also known as Gurudev, is remembered as the most prolific writer in Bengali. His Gitanjali, a book of poems, earned him the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. His Rabindra Sangeet, short stories and novels are gems of Bengali literature. He also composed Jana Gana Mana, the national anthem of India. Qazi Nazrul Islam and Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyay are other famous poets and writers of Bengali literature. Hindi, Bharatendu Harishchandra and Munshi Premchand are the important writers of Hindi during the modern period. Bharatendu is considered as one of the greatest Hindi writers of modern India. He was also a trendsetter in Hindi prose writing. He wrote several dramas on the contemporary socio-economic and political condition of India. Andher Nagri is a very popular drama written by him. A famous writer of 20th century of India was Munshi Premchand, who wrote both in Hindi and Urdu. He was a novelist, a story writer, and a dramatist. He is known as Upanyas Samrat due to his contribution to literature. His famous novels include Gaban, Godan, and Kafan, whereas Panch Parmeshwar, Shatranj Ke Khiladi, and Namak Ka Daroga are some of his famous stories. He wrote in a direct and simple style. His writings reflect the turmoil of Indian society during early 20th century. Apart from Premchand, Urdu poets like Muhammad Iqbal, Mirza Ghalib, and Bahadur Shah Zafar reflect the socio-political sentiment of the country. Iqbal's poem Sare Jahan Se Achha is still sung with pride, and Ghalib's couplets are liked by everyone. The 19th and 20th century Marathi literature was mostly dominated by English-educated intellectuals such as M.G. Ranade and Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Gopal Hari Deshmukh, Bhimrao Ambedkar, and Jyotiba Phule's. Fakir Mohan Senapati is regarded as the father of Oriya nationalism and modern Oriya literature. He enriched modern Oriya literature with his novels and short stories. The period of modern literature in Assamese was started by Lakshminath Besbarwa and enriched by Jyoti Prasad Agrawala, Hem Barwa, Atul Chandra Hazarika, and others through their creation. The works of Dalpatram, Govardhan Tripathi, Gandhiji, and others in Gujarati, Veer Salingam, Bal Murali Krishna, and others in Telugu, Kempu Narayana, Lakshman Gadkar, G. Venkata Rao, and others in Kannada, K. N. Pillai, Vaikom, Kumaran Asan, and Valathol Narayana Menon, and others in Malayalam have contributed the growth of vernacular literature during the modern period. Subramanya Bharati, known as Mahakavi Bharatiyar, is celebrated as one of the South India's greatest poet and author. He is known for the simple yet stirring use of language. A number of women writers and poets also made a significant contribution to modern Indian literature through their writings, both in English and regional languages. Savitribai Phule was the first woman teacher in modern Maharashtra. Pandita Ramabai, Sarojini Naidu, and Rukaiya Sakhabat Hussain wrote mostly on themes related to women issues. Growth of the press. The newspapers, magazines, and journals voiced the dreams, aspirations, and problems of the Indian people, while at the same time making them aware of the events in different parts of India and the world. The newspapers made people aware of the exploitative policies of the British and created public opinion on matters of social importance. They played a crucial role in the freedom struggle by unifying people across the length and breadth of the country. The earliest newspapers and magazines in India were started during the British rule. James Augustus Hickey is considered as the father of modern press in India since he began the first Indian newspaper from Calcutta, the Bengal Gazette, in January 1780. The first newspaper in an Indian language was Samachar Darpan in Bengali. The other important newspapers of the period were Amrita Bazar Patrika, Kesari, The Hindu, The Tribune, The Mail and others. The British on their part tried to censor Indian press and passed many acts to music. Initially, music and dance were confined to homes and temples. It was during the 20th century that music and dance became part of the public arena. Girls were not initiated into learning music and these art forms were looked down upon in society. However, over a period of time, these art forms became acceptable and an ordinary people's culture came into being. Vishnu Digambar Paluskar, Gangubai Hangal, Kumar Gandharva, Pandit Vishnu Narayan, Bhat Khande were the famous musicians of the era who contributed to the growth of Hindustani music in North India. In the southern part of the country, Carnatic music with its emphasis on vocals was encouraged by the Maratha rulers of the Thanjavur kingdom of Tamil Nadu and the Vodiyar rulers of Mysore kingdom of Karnataka. During the 9-day Dashera festival, elaborate music recitals took place in the Mysore palace. Puranadhara Das is known as the father of Carnatic music due to his immense contribution and formulation of the basic lessons of the music style. The contemporaries Tyagaraja, Muthuswami, Dikshitar and Shyama Sastri are regarded as the trinity of Carnatic music. Western music also acquired popularity in India during this time. Musical instruments like the violin came to be used in many parts of the country. During this period, films and film music were also introduced in the country, which found an enthusiastic audience amongst the young men and women. Recorded music also came into prominence at this time. India's first gramophone company, HMV, or His Master's Voice, was established in Calcutta in 1901. Dance. Around this time, Indian dance in all its varied forms also entered the public arena in India and became accessible to ordinary men and women. Rabindranath Tagore's dance dramas or Rabindranritya Natya, Chitrangada, Chandalika and Shyama were his significant contributions to the development of an indigenous dance form. He invited excerpts of various classical dance forms to study and perform at the Vishwabharati University. Another famous personality and pioneer in the field of dance in India was Uday Shankar. Immensely influenced by the European dance and theatrical forms, he synthesized and adapted them with Indian classical dance. The Thanjavur Maratha kings patronized dance in South India. The four brothers, popularly known as the Thanjavur Quartet, Chinnaya, Ponnaya, Shivanandam and Vadivelu, were expert choreographers and dance teachers. They were instrumental in developing new techniques and styles of dance. The Devadasi dance or dance of the temple Devadasis was popular in the temples of South India. Sculpture. Traditional Indian sculpture during this period saw Western influence. European sculptures were brought to India in order to cater to the needs of the foreigners staying in the country. Thereafter, these sculptures gained the fancy of Indians who began to imitate the lifestyle of the colonial rulers. Many sculptors also went abroad to learn the art of making sculptures. The newly produced sculptures represented a synthesis of Indian and European styles and featured secular themes. Theatre. The earliest form of the theatre of India was the Sanskrit theatre. Modern Indian theatre developed during the period of colonial rule under the British Empire, from the mid-19th century until the mid-20th. In order to resist its use by Indians as an instrument of protest against colonial rule, the British government imposed the Dramatic Performances Act in 1876. However, theatres in India continued to grow in number. Dramas were written both in English and the regional languages. Dance dramas were a popular form of theatre, especially in South India.